Our first speaker this evening is architect Uday Andhare. He's from Ahmedabad, runs a studio called Indigo Architects. Is a principal at Indigo Architects since 1998 and steers the studio with a belief in a technically appropriate and ecologically sensitive approach that weaves the threads of traditional wisdom into design. An approach he believes can make architecture expressive and meaningful. His academic qualifications includes an undergraduate from the CEP University Ahmedabad in 1993 and a master's degree with honors from the University of New Mexico, USA in 1995. Uday has interned with Doshi and worked in Mexico as well as worked with the DES Engineering Systems, Redwood City, California, prior to setting up his own office, Indigo Architects in Ahmedabad, India in 1998. I welcome you, sir, and we look forward to your presentation. Over to Uday Andhare.
I'm very happy to know from Prasanna Desai that a lot of students from the first year who've just joined the fraternity of students are here, and I welcome them, and I feel happy to be talking to all of you as well, because you will be seeing through and we'll be passing these batons over to your generation at some point in time. So it's wonderful having you here as well and being part of the FEED legacy. I represent a practice formed 25 years ago with my partner Mosmi, and currently we are a team of about 6 architects and some young interns. As students of architecture, we were fortunate to have gleaned from pedagogy in the late early 90s in India. This set valid directions emphasizing a critical review of contemporary architecture, modernism, prevalent vernacular traditions of various regions, and an understanding of formal Indian architecture that fostered interpretation. I feel that it has equipped us as professionals to define individual directions as professionals and academics that are diverse and meaningful in varied contexts. Our teachers emphasize the importance of learning to see and to observe and assimilate the everyday experiences around us in profound ways. I often remember our times growing up as children, later students, teachers, and now practitioners of architecture as perpetual gatherers of a multitude of experiences over time, enriching and filling our own Jhola, which is a bag or a sling bag as it is known as in India, visiting ancestral homes, sleeping out during summers on terraces, enjoying the aromas from kitchens, peeping into your grandmother's cupboard, finding queer things, almost collecting, revisiting, and reflecting on what we have in our memory. This is almost akin to owning a box full of collectibles as a child. Storing nuts and bolts, feathers, dried leaves, flowers, used matchbox containers, bus tickets, postage stamps, metal scrap, marbles, flashcards, toys, books, photographs, pins, washers, and so many such things. We were unaware then, but now realize that those objects and experiences have embedded memories awaiting recall. In an image-driven world, we tend to see a lot, but little remains embedded as the image quickly escapes recall. The experience, however, being tactile, is more lasting. Here, I see the Jhola as a container with no cover or lid, not lockable, and available for others to get a glimpse of what it contains, and for one to quickly give in an act of sharing, while growing in value in the same process. I believe that the enrichment of the Jhola is fundamental to the design process and helps define personal trajectories of thought. How does then one discover value is the question. In studio learning, academic rigor must always be paired with the process of acting upon an idea. It is not important as much to arrive at a solution at the outset, but the journey which defines the imminent outcome. Observing and internalizing varied experiences is the tool to be honed. The omnipresent Jhola then becomes your companion. The outcome of the design process is celebrated but at the same time relegated to a work in progress. This is an essential part of learning, I think. One observes how reticent, meaningful works of architecture not only speak of processes and struggles, but also sure achievements, emphasizing the humane over everything else. These also show you the mirror in many ways. Cities and their institutions shape our thought. Our practice is based out of Ahmedabad in Gujarat on the western part of India. And historically, the city of Ahmedabad has been a fertile ground for interdisciplinary engagements fostered by its many institutions where seers, saints, musicians, bards, religious institutions, politicians, scientists, engineers, architects, artists, writers, historians, sculptors, and many such trespassers have shared a common stage backed by philanthropy and astute commerce. This amalgam has been invaluable and helped our abilities to make lateral connections across disciplines, enriching the process of learning. A deep curiosity in the culinary traditions of our context, addressing scales and methods of public engagement, resonate with our own understanding of our architectural milieu and an indigenous aesthetic sense. Methods of farming, preservation of seed, exchange, revival, dissemination, and the wisdom to handle precious water resources seen in examples such as the rain-fed farming systems of Ramgarh in Rajasthan are a response to the acute scarcity of rain. The craft of building embeds a deeper knowledge of natural water systems, its geographical and societal context as a whole, into a beautiful water-centric approach for building in the hot, dry regions. It shows the deft manipulation of material and earth to realize forms of relevance, providing invaluable lessons in the engineered resilience of utilitarian structures. The idea of conservation of water through its ingenious methods, seen in dug wells in the Thar desert of Rajasthan, and various systems of drawing water exhibit living practices and methods. To us, the documentation of such experience is an important tool as architects, where every experience is noted to internalize, absorb, and interpret this wisdom. To us, the everyday is important. Our home that we built in 2003 on the western outskirts of the city and our studio in 2010 have been our labs of sorts. Biophilic engagements and oneness with nature define this endeavor. This forms the core of the many experiments that come into our imagination with water, food, and alternative building materials. Most of our works have been on very modest budgets, but the economy of means becomes the driver for us to manipulate the experiential qualities of sunlight, breeze, and nature. It is the sieve through which the everyday filters into our work and being, and prompts us to question each time what value could we bring about through our work that is enduring and fruitful in its making. This to us is the pertinent question. I am reminded of this quote by Alejandro Aravena, where he says, "Scarcity of resources becomes a filter to arbitrariness in design, and this to us strikes a universal chord." Our practice does not explore the aesthetics of form alone, but materials at the outset, and is born out of several fundamental concerns. Issues of context, history, precedent, place, ecology, native genius, societal beliefs, frugality, and adherence to a process-intensive approach define the work method. Buildings, in our opinion, ought to be situated in their context, address the pertinent issue of our times. The expression and the emerging aesthetic becomes true to the concerns. Identifying native genius and weaving its value into the design process is the trigger that we seek to learn new ways to be effective. Academia informs practice and vice versa. Intent must be coupled with a process-driven approach where each of us can define our way of thinking and working and hone it patiently over time. This allows meaningful influences and shared experiences to define our trajectories. In more tangible terms, it is imperative to define frames of view to understand and extract meaning through the physical realities of a site, program, and people to embed our work with meaning. To be able to effectively address and examine issues from the larger scale to the specific simultaneously. The key question this raised must relate to one's attitude to land, attitude to climate, plan organization and organizing principles, the diagram being emblematic of concerns and programmatic dictates, spatial relationships, scales of operation from the individual to the collective, parts as contributors to the whole, but not merely a summation. We believe plan is a generator of character which embodies systems of construction and materiality at the outset. Form embeds meaning defined by an approach to rationalize in search of a new expressive identity. One seeks new ways of putting things together. Expression is an outcome of systemic choices, materiality, meaningful assemblage of elements examined against program, context, economics, extractions and interpretations from vernacular traditions to evolve new hybrids. Articulation in detail is seen as an outcome of a mediation between various entities with the overall design intent in mind. The design process engages with the primary concern for ease and economy of construction, embedding stability and thermal comfort, exploring important concepts of layering, porosity, program validation, and eventually seeking expression through making. In our work, there are certain tenets that we follow, which look at not attempting to cool the air within the building, but keeping the structure from gaining heat. Device systems that drain the heat from the roof and other surfaces that tend to heat up. Use materials and surfaces such as lime and fly ash bricks, stone and lime plasters, and circulate nighttime cool air through the building so as to dissipate the heat gain during the day. Harvesting rainwater not only to satisfy drinking water needs throughout the year, but also circulate the stored water to keep the structure cool in summer and warm in winter. Keeping the structure cool is cheaper than attempting to cool the air within. All of the above strategies are integral to a design process we follow and allows hoping for an expressive, meaningful outcome. The process of design engages technical anchors at the outset, testing appropriateness of an idea. Structural systems and economies, confined masonry construction, water-centric, thermal comfort-centric design approaches, lime construction and other methods, and labor-intensive approaches define the work method. The next few slides talk about explorations of materials and construction methods that are essential to develop a deeper understanding of appropriateness. This slide shows confined masonry construction using lime bricks and lime mortar. The architectural plan in this process usually also is the structure. We've used quarter bond masonry, which is an alternative to minimizing the steel consumed and achieve a stable thermally resilient structure. Tectonic choices that are not image driven but informed by site, context and circumstance define the outcome. Construction methods and choices at the outset define language. Understanding processes firsthand and are essential to defining your own set of rules of engagement with materials. These inform how you can design, define detail, and respond in various contexts. Here, resolution is born through these deliberations and care. These observations are extremely essential for resilient structures. Expression emerges from simple, thoughtful, everyday needs. Shielding from the heat using vegetative screens and trellis structures in bamboo and steel form part of the strategy to cut heat gain and harsh glare. You can develop an armature to grow food as well. Experiments like storing hay on rooftops, preventing heat gain from the roof, and feeding the same to cattle eventually. The turbo vent, shown here, often used in our buildings, is used to continuously draw heat from the interior and keep the building well ventilated naturally. An effective way to drain heat out of the building is by inducing nighttime cool air into the house and flush out the heat, thereby preparing the building to counter the summer heat during the day. The thermal flywheel is an important tool to achieve thermal comfort. Screening and layering of space by the window, first with a non-conductive barrier, a roll-down bamboo screen, and glass for enclosure and transparency is the sequence we use to shield openings from direct solar exposure as well as sudden erratic downpours. The chhajja or awning is our go-to device which has always been a useful element traditionally. This element is not so fashionable anymore in most of the tropical modern. Deep shade and overhangs play a major role in achieving thermal comfort while allowing for a biophilic engagement between the built and the natural. Vernacular traditions embed best practices to use minimal resources to build. What you see here is a cluster of tanks under construction built by farmers that can hold 25,000 liters of water in each module. These methods have been mainstreamed into our work with critical engineering inputs to develop a model for stability and resilience in earthquake-prone areas and can integrate modern systems for radiant cooling and structure cooling using the tank as a geothermal mass and also hold rainwater for consumption simultaneously. We have built a variety of water harvesting structures that are geothermal devices designed for unique contextual conditions and needs across building types and scale with capacities ranging from about 25,000 liters to about 100,000 liters. In the slides that follow, I would like to touch upon aspects of intent, strategy, and expression as a driver of process seen through some of our works, hoping that it resonates with you as well. The Natrani Amphitheatre project is part of the 70-year-old Darpana Academy for Performing Arts in Ahmedabad. The Sabarmati Riverfront Development Project in Ahmedabad impacted the existing theatre when a major chunk of the stage area was lost to the riverfront edge and sidewalk. This had left the theatre inoperable for several years. The new proposed layout attempts to mitigate this situation and reimagines the theatre to improve upon its existing infrastructure and capacity. In this slide, I show the sequential development of what happened to the site and eventually our intervention, which is the last point here, the last slide here, in 2017-18 actually responds to this historic site with a challenge as was its physical location and condition, which is seen in the subsequent slides. There were two buildings here, one by Achut Kanvinde, which was built in 1968, and subsequently, before that, the first building in 1963, which was a small library by B.V. Doshi, which eventually had to be removed in this new development because it was not salvageable. I'd like to share an anecdote where when we discussed this with Doshi personally, the project, he came back with this idea where we explained to him that all the rubble and all the things from the previous structures would be recycled, reused to make the bricks. And he sent an email to us saying that what better way to preserve the spirit of the old in creation of the new. And that provided the impetus to go forth and define what you were about to see. Seen here is the opened up edge to the riverfront and the acoustical wall under construction, while the library by B.V. Doshi is seen in profile retaining the side of the theatre steps. The proximity of the existing modern era buildings in brick and concrete by Doshi and Kanvinde, as well as the new acoustic wall inspired the warp and weft of the new theatre. The architecture sought to express continuity with the older materials through the use of exposed lime bricks recycled from the debris of the demolished older structures, including the library that was in a state of disrepair. The geometric center of the old stage was retained and the rainwater tank was built below it. Fanning out from this center, the new layout increased the theatre capacity. The natural contour provided the necessary depth below the cascading tiers to house the green rooms and utilities, including the infrastructure for air circulation and natural cooling. The cross-section of the tiered theatre culminates at the stage with its huge water harvesting tank below and the towering scale of the acoustical wall as its backdrop. Juxtaposed with the solidity of the brick mass around, the curved metal cable-stayed catwalk hovers high over the seating space, expressing a nimble lightness. The metalwork defines its own purpose of making to provide the necessary flexibility for new age performances and state-of-the-art lighting and sound. The tension between contrasting elements defines its own idiom as a performance space, while the old. The articulation between the dance pool by Kanvinde and the new wall enclosing the theatre posed a delightful outcome on this project. The new and the old coexist, each stating its position. All services in green rooms are located below the theatre steps that remain inherently cool. Lime is used in construction along with dolomite plaster to provide the necessary thermal advantage and longevity. The building is designed on the principle of thermal draining of the structure, where a rainwater harvesting tank of about 1 lakh liter capacity holds water which gets circulated within the steps thereby reducing the temperature of the structure. There is also an air handling unit which is providing fresh air and brings air through diffusers that you see in the step details. Material articulation and detail reflect the underlying concerns as seen here in the diffuser detail for airflow below the seating. And so does the exploration of the program to achieve a variety of spatial engagements between the brick wall and the steel cable stayed catwalk. The access to the river is off of the entry space to the theatre and is the fulcrum of movement and use that transforms itself into a performance space for smaller events which are informal in nature. The green room below the tiered seating is a special space displaying the archival posters of the Darpana Academy. The artists emerge from green rooms through the backstage alley into a transformed, contained performance space, where the stark brick walls provide a canvas for projections and evocative narratives. In contrast to the previous one, this is a studio for an artisan who is engaged in the craft of ajrak printing in Kutch. The region of Kutch is located on the westernmost edge of the Indian peninsula. Its western and southern edges touch the Arabian Sea, while its northern edge extends into the Thar Desert and the salt plains. Kutch owes its distinctive ecology to the swaths of salt plains and dry up after the monsoon. Kutch is animated by an exceptional diversity of textile crafts practiced by its various communities, all in the face of limited resources that pervade the lifestyles and the ethos of the people of the region. A sense of space and expanse that seems timeless. The site for the Ajrak studio is situated on the road to Bhuj in Ajakpur village. Ajrak is one of the oldest styles of hand block printing on textiles, dating back 4,500 years practiced in this part of Kutch. It involves the engagement of all 5 elements in its making, material alchemy with water, the sun and the earth. Printed on both sides with the print matching exactly with the same depth of color, it requires extraordinary skill to achieve, and the process can take about 16 stages of alternative applications of resists, dyes and mordants with multiple cycles of washing and drying of the fabric impregnated with rich tones of natural dyes. The final result is evocative of a complex chemistry that uses ingenuity, simple infrastructure and human effort. Ajrak is traditionally worn by male nomadic pastoralists of the region as a turban or waistcloth or a scarf. The motifs, colors and manner of wearing identify and separate the various groups and subgroups amongst the pastoral communities of Kutch. The world-renowned Ajrak master artisan Ismail Khatri is our patron for this project, seen here with his sons in the old workshop which became the site for the Ajrak studio. Ajakpur is a modern, organized grid layout planned after the 2000 earthquake by the community elders, in contrast to the organic accretive settlements seen in the region. Over time, the Khatri community has built their own social, cultural, religious and educational infrastructure. The character of this settlement is open and amorphous, touching borders of nearby fields. Dealing with real issues of groundwater pollution, the printers have shifted to the use of vegetable dyes. Seen here is the common water recycling initiative of the community, evidence of the state of the craft, people's awareness, and the operative scales of the industry and its infrastructure. The Ajrak studio is seen as an intervention that is pivotal in the context of this settlement, a beacon of sorts for the community pointing to the future. The context here is both the past and the present. The design draws from the form and character of the formal dwelling typology of Kutch. Parallel walls separate street from the inner spaces, while courts fluidly transform from workspace to social space, embodying both human and physical infrastructure of the craft to sustain as an industry. This was the germinal idea that anchored our design to emerge and develop. The site of the old workshed was adjacent to the family home of the Khatris, located in the northeast corner of the settlement. The new studio occupies the same corner. The built edge is defined by the expressive western facade facing the community commons, and a sense of place gradually emerged. This is also the public edge of the studio and a meeting place for locals during the day, the corner reminiscent of the village plinth. The plan is layered using a series of parallel walls and controlled openings, 2 volumes oriented north-south lengthwise, with single inclined roofs on the shorter sides define the working court. The nature of space in the studio is multivalent and contiguous, as an exhibition space and audiovisual area for demonstrations of certain printing processes, techniques, and a place for congregation is defined. The moorings of this plan are deeply cultural, alluding to the center as a void. Each space has the potential to overlap into the other, enabling the process of the craft in an arena of intense activity. The ensemble of the infrastructure for the craft is handled within the court and its periphery. An apparent external opacity of the form reveals a porous inner space. The roofs enclose, contain, and shade. Here, the design embeds three strategies for making the building resilient and thermally efficient as a space to habit and work. Appropriate material selection and building system uses brick masonry with lime plaster, and steel and insulated metal sheet roof. Lime ensures better expulsion of the heat to the infrared spectrum, thereby draining heat effectively into the sky. The mild steel and bamboo trellis on the western terrace is used to dry fabric and acts as an occasional shading device for the roof slab below. All timber for fenestrations uses recycled and repurposed materials. Preventing the building from gaining heat was achieved by the plan orientation and segregation of service functions and storage walls along the west and the south. Stored rainwater is circulated in the slab, which helps cool the structure and ensures a stable thermal environment. Values of frugality, the integration of needs for the craft, respect for water, and thermal comfort were at the core of this endeavor, providing the backbone for a robust, humane infrastructure for the workplace. A sense of space emerges from these concerns. Dignity and transparency of intent in detail resonated with the ethos of the craft. The architecture attempts to draw from and enjoy this exchange. Expression, articulation, and resilience in detail was an important objective in this project, attempted with materials that are oft used locally and available off the shelf. Functionality and spatial character is enhanced through simple fenestrations and screens that allow operability to spaces, while robust details become evocative of the blocks used in the craft. The relative formality of the retail shop for visitors establishes a dialogue across the court with the informal hands-on printing area, which is used as a demonstration and production space for Ajrak. The architecture attempts to become an accompaniment to this process, facilitating a sensorial exchange between the craft and the space that it contains. The Ajrak studio opened one summer evening in 2018 by inviting the children of the community for a meal in the courtyard. With an average of 60 walk-in visitors per day in the winter and 7,000 every year, the impact of this initiative is significant to the community and the craft. Several design houses, researchers, students of textile and fashion come to Ajrak studio to collaborate and learn from the master. Enthused children learn through osmosis by spending time here with the artisans. Craft as industry, identity, community, place, architectural expression, and dissemination coalesce in its ambit. Here is a glimpse of how this place is currently used.
वल्ला मुल्ला पकड़ पाक पल्ला होएगा ही बल्ला रसुल्ला पुकारो कयामत के दिन में अनामत भी जावे मुसीबत न पाओ सो हिम्मत न हारो रखो याद दिल में मोहब्बत का कलमा मुसलमान सारे नबी जी पुकारे इल्हिल्ला 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 पुकारे इल्हिल्ला 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 पैरी मन माथाए हरक ए अजरक पैरी मन माथाए हरक ए अजरक खेतरने सीमाणे क्यारे पंखीड़ानी हारे हारे खेतरने सीमाणे क्यारे पंखीड़ानी हारे हारे कसबियो नी थाए परक ए अजरक पैरी मन माथाए हरक ए अजरक पैरी मन माथाए हरक ए अजरक वल्ला मुल्ला पकड़ पाक पल्ला होएगा ही बल्ला रसुल्ला पुकारो कयामत के दिन में अनामत भी जावे मुसीबत न पाओ सो हिम्मत न हारो रखो याद दिल में मोहब्बत का कलमा मुसलमान सारे नबी जी पुकारे इल्हिल्ला 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 पुकारे इल्हिल्ला ilhilla 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 pukare ilhilla ilhilla ilhilla.
Thank you.